Back again, video 77. This video is called Words, Numbers, and Power. 77 is power in Hebrew, Oz. It also it can be split up into 34 and 43. 34 is spirit, 43 is flesh. Boom. Power is the combination of the spirit and flesh. How does that make sense? Well, let's think about that. Okay, obviously if we're trying to be wizards, it's kind of all about power, right? But you learn a lot of things when you start working with power. Number one is better not to work with power. Better not to. And I'll explain why. I mean, I've explained it a bunch of times already, but it has to do with nature and how nature works, okay? Everything has two sides. Like if you're thinking about power, like electricity, like the lightning bolt, right? Like the hidden stone, right? You're gonna understand how this piezo electricity is the basis of life on Earth, for one thing, but a lot of other things, including our perceptions and our relationship to time. And it has to do with these crystalline substances that form inside the human body, and these networks and lattices that are natural and that exist and that have never been, I mean, to be fair, like modern advances in laser interferometry inside the body, through optical fibers and stuff like that, that's really what's revealing these more subtle structures. But in essence, these are things that were known and used by ancient peoples. But the point is to say power, okay? Think about a lightning bolt. If you see it, it kind of looks like this little mesh, like blood vessels, or like a tree, or like a branching pattern, right? So there's a reason. It has to do with the structure and fabric of reality and how power flows through it, okay? It has this tendency to bifurcate and fork, right? So that shows you the two sides of everything. So what you want is you want the highest level of conductivity possible, okay? Because every portion you exceed that conductivity, you're losing energy due to heat and friction, okay? This is how power works. Unless you have superconduction, which, you know, all the real technologies are based on that, okay? So if you think about it, if you have perfect conductivity, there's no manifestation of the presence of that power. It's only through resistance that power becomes visible, right? That's why we have heat and light. If you think about a light bulb, traditional incandescent light bulb, that's heat. It's friction. It's resistance in the filament that creates that heat and light, okay? So that's the manifest nature of power, and you really don't want to work with that, you know? It's not good. Okay, but what I'm saying is there's always an infinite supply of power all throughout the grid, okay? But it's evenly distributed and it's freely flowing, so it never even becomes visible. This is the nature of the ether, and this is the most basic shit ever, okay? It's the basis of everything. But no one it's hidden. It has to be hidden because we live in a Babylon cult of scarcity, right? So if you conceal the presence of the limitless power matrix of all reality, then you can never have a slave cult with people, dominance and submission and BDSM bullshit. Okay, so this gets us into Oz and these numbers. Okay, let's look at the numbers. 77 obviously is about 7, but it's also about 14 because it's 2 sevens, right? So, okay, we get into the Sabbath. Now this is key to all those videos that I've been doing, okay? The previous 3 in particular. The Sabbath is the key, because what is that? That's when the Divine Father presence of Yahweh or whatnot, Odin, comes to earth. He only comes down there for his woman. That's the only reason he's even there. You know, there's these commentaries, I don't know, maybe they call them the Midrashic literature, but it's like these Hebrew commentaries on their mysticism. And, you know, they're like, why did God create the world? And he's like, I want a place for my lady to stay. And that's all it is. That's the only reason why he comes here. But in a way, she is his presence, right? The unmanifested aspect is the nature of the Father, and the manifested aspect is the nature of the Shekinah, the Shakti power that exists in the world through this friction, right? So in the Egyptian system, that friction is the power of Set, right? Set. So like Set in French is 7, Sabbath, right? Septuagint. I mean, I could get all into that about the sevens, right? And how the 7 is called the mysterious woman, because it has no divisors or multiples in the decan. Okay? But the 7 is the key to power. But it's not something you really want to be fucking with if you're smart. You use it internally, you don't display it. Okay? But let's talk about this. Why is this all the case? Okay, in ancient, going back to Egypt again, we have Set, the deity, right? There's Horus and Set. There's day sun and night sun, right? Day sun guards the city, and he guards the pharaoh, and he guards law and order and everything that's clearly defined, and the distribution of power and resources, right? But Set, he's the force of chaos, and they're twins, right? I mean, there's so much. I really don't want to go into this too much because it gets pretty gross. Like, you learn this is what a lot of the sex cult is based on, right? All this Babylon, this Masonic like butt sex cult that they have, this gay cult, right? It's based on Horus and Set. Okay, James Bond, Joaquin and Boaz. These see how that starts? J-A-B-O, James Bond, Joaquin and Boaz. Okay. It's this mojo. It's Austin Powers mojo, right? What is it? It's a sex cult, okay? Go back and watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service with George Lazenby, okay? He poses as a geneticist, right? So he's showing you this is all about breeding and genetics, number one, okay? What else happens? He's wearing a skirt, okay? James Bond is wearing a skirt. And he goes to this place in Switzerland. And what does he find? All these fembots, okay? All these sex-programmed, hypnotized women that are sent around the world, like Fox Force 5 on fucking Pulp Fiction, right? They go around the world and they infiltrate and they crush and destroy and create chaos through Set and his satanic shit. But the Sabbath is Set, right? The sabbatical cults worship Saturn, okay? But this Saturn, this destructive chaos force that exists outside the perimeters of this sacred space, is power. And if it's misapplied and it's ill distributed, it creates friction and heat, and it creates destruction, and it crumbles whatever it touches, like the Tower of Babel struck by lightning. Boom, gone. Okay, crushed. Okay, so in ancient Egypt, the pharaohs and the wizards and the people of power have this thing that's called a was. A was, right? Like we have watts of electricity, right? So they have this scepter with a head of Set and a forked tail. Okay? What is that for? They control the destructive force. They keep it choked. They keep it contained. And they use it like a magic wand. You only use it with super precision and super clarity, perfect timing, like perfect location, perfect distribution. Like you don't, it's never something you even want people to know that you have, because in most cases to display this power is evidence of misuse. That's why it's called secret mantra, secret tantra, right? There's a reasoning behind all that, and I'm gonna go into secret versus Serket. Okay, there's this Egyptian goddess, scorpion goddess called Serket, and I mean, get all into this. Okay, you know how Odin's rune looks like this? That's Orion, dude. Go look at the constellation of Orion sometime. And there's the part in the middle that's Orion's belt that looks like the complex of the pyramids on the Giza Plateau. But that's just one part of it. There's another cross underneath that. An X and a fucking... This is Odin shit, man. What is Odin, okay? Odin is a principle of spherical and circular geometry, and it represents the heavenly motions in the dome. Okay, the earth is a flat plane and the heavens are a dome. This was taught to me by my earliest martial arts teachers, how square movements give rigidity and strength and the circular movements give fluidity. And so as the woman is the web, right? The web of Tantra. Tantra is the science of weaving the web. Okay, the woman is the web, right? Or the web, more properly, is the combination of the male and female that forms the fabric of reality. And it also exactly has to do with electricity, positive and negative terminals of electricity, right? The suction flow and the fountain flow, right? Toroidal physics, man. Okay? This is what runs everything. So, to understand Libra Oz is to understand the Sabbath. The Sabbath is when the divine male and the divine female come together. It's the holiest day of the week. Nothing else is done. You don't do other shit on that day. It's sacred, okay? Why is it sacred? Okay, because of this power, this 7, this number 7. But the power of the 7 comes from the power of restriction and confinement, right? Tightening something down, choking it down to a laser-like pinpoint of precision. Okay, that's Tantra this way, okay? You're confining the power down to this tiny, imperceptibly thin tube. It's called the central channel, okay? Salung and Tigle. This is the Tantra way. You know, you could get into acupuncture style where you have a Zhongmai, the central channel, the central vessel, the great thoroughfare. Okay? Every fucking society in the world and everyone's ancestors all knew all the shit. And we have been removed of it because we live in a satanic Babylon cult, right? Set runs the cult. He's supposed to be on the bottom of the pyramid, and he's on the top of the pyramid. And that's why everything is all fucked. You know, and the worst rise to the top. It's clearly obvious. It's like an inversion system. Okay? But anyway, the point, let's try and say, now that we see this, like how do we use power? How do we understand power and strength, right? So power itself is just a flow, right? And left to its own, it's invisible and it just pervades everything equally, and it has its own laws of distribution. Okay? So then you bring in Oz, right? The spirit and the flesh. So the flesh is this containment vessel and a confining principle. Okay, that gives us locality in space and time. It gives us so-called incarnation to come into the meat. You're entering the meat, right? But whatever you are, your thoughts, your memories, your ancestral lineage, everything like that makes you up, and all your talents and skills and memories and acquired experiences and all that is what you would call you. But that's not material, and it becomes incarnated. It comes into the meat and it goes out of the meat at the end. Okay? So that into the meat process is Set. That is Shaitan. That is the adversary. He's the adversary of us. So what does adverse mean? It means on the far side. It's on the lower side of us, right? And he's pulling us down into the flesh through scarcity mind and Babylon mind. And once we enter into that, we're always, like I said, it's all into the dominance and submission when you get into that. And that's not what you want. That's the devil. It's literally the devil. What does devil mean? It comes from the word diabolos, two balls, two-ball cane, the patron of all Freemasonry, the goat, the fucking misapplied sexual force of constraint and confinement and fucking imprisonment. Okay, that's the Babylon cult of Freemasonry. That's why they have the G. It stands for Gionim. It was the name of the leaders of these Babylonian Talmudic academies of race-based fucking genetic breeding programs. Okay? But they have the Oz. They have the Libra Oz. They have the ability to control the sexual force in their desired fashion. Which for them, because it's a sabbatical cult, it's about human sacrifice, blood sacrifice, and the abuse and constrainment of the sexual force. That's what they run everything on. And it's into non-procreative, violent abuse. Like all these frats and stuff, man. I'm telling you. This is what you gotta understand. This is who runs the world. This is what they use. They use abuse. They use trauma-based mind control. They use psychological conditioning. They use electrostatic magnetism. Mesmerism, right? Who was Anton Mesmer? He was this Masonic Illuminati motherfucker that was putting people into trance or putting them unconscious through the application of a magnetic current. Okay, because that's how our spine works. Okay, that's your real magic wand. And it has to do with power. Like I said, the spine runs on electricity, microcurrents, okay, milliamperes currents through the spine. How is that generated? Okay, it's generated on piezoelectricity of crystals inside the body and optical transduction. Okay, that's where power comes from. And like I said, it's ubiquitous. But everyone wants to get into this friction because they have a false ego concept, right? And they're giving their locality and their temporality and their body domination over everything. They're giving the flesh domination over the spirit. It's an inverted picture of reality, and so it's the way of pain. And all you get is friction and conflict when you go that way. Maybe you can control it some, but in the end, everything's taken away from you because you identify with flesh and you identify with matter. And when you die, and when your body corrodes due to corruption and you cry and you get sad and you fear, and death is like this fear process, okay? Because you're inverted and flipped, so change it.